So with that, happy to take your questions.
Thanks, Ed. Welcome back. I trust your Panama experience was truly palindromic, and
We missed you.
you get that.
I do, and we missed you very much. Yes.
And I guess congratulations on the honor that you've so happily accepted from Russia government. Just on the actions that were taken yesterday, and then I got two extremely brief non-Ukraine questions. On the visa bans that the Secretary imposed, do you have any idea how many of those people, and I know you're not naming them, and I know that in some cases you can't name them, but how many actually had visas? So in other words, how many were actually notified that an existing visa in their passport book has been revoked? Do you know how many that is? And at the same time, do you know how many do not currently have valid visas?
Well, so we announced really two things yesterday, Matt. There were two elements of this. The Department of the Treasury designated entities and individuals involved in attempting to evade the sanctions that have been imposed by the United States and our international partners on Russia. And then similarly, Secretary Blinken, and this is what you were referring to, announced steps to impose visa restrictions on a total, as I said before, of 655 Russians and Belarusian officials and so-called proxy authorities in response to war crimes committed by Russia's forces in Ukraine. These restrictions include those implicated in domestic repression against the Russian people, in the Lukashenko's regime, continued violent crackdown on the people of Belarus and their democratic aspirations, and misconduct by Russia's proxies in the Donbass. Treasury also designated entities, but you're asking about the visa restrictions. As you know, visa records are confidential. We, of course, do have a record of everyone who has been granted a U.S. visa, but for these 655 individuals, Russians and Belarusians, who were designated yesterday, they will not be getting a visa should they apply.
Yeah, I know. That's not my question. My question, and I don't frankly don't know if you have the answer to that, but how many of these 655 actually had current valid visas that have been revoked, and how many of them are not notified at all, but would be notified should they show up someplace to apply for one? That sorry, you're on the list.
Well, they would be notified were they to apply for a U.S. visa, and of course that follows yesterday's action. But visa records are confidential, so we're just not in a position to provide numbers of this list of 655 of those who may have had visas already in their possession.
So then it's really impossible for anyone to know what the impact of this is, because
not if they try to travel to the United States.
Yeah, but
they'll see that impact very clearly.
But you don't know that they want to. I mean, yes, it's an avenue that has been cut off for them, but they don't necessarily know it.
Have we spoken to each of these 655 individuals to determine their aspirations or not to travel to the United States? I don't suspect we've done that, but
but people who do have current visas you have to notify them that it's being revoked and that it's no longer valid. And so I just want to know if you know the number of how many of these 655 actually had visas that are.
We know which of them had active visas in their possession. I'm just not in a position to offer you a number.
Is it more than one? I mean, is it more than a handful, or is it zero?
Matt, I'm not in a position to offer you a number. As we've said, visa records are confidential.
On the two other ones, and this can be very brief. I'm just wondering if you can tell us anything about the migration talks of the Cubans today, and then secondly, if there's any update on this delegation visiting the Solomon Islands.
Sure. So first on the migration talks that we've announced with the Cubans, these provide an opportunity for discussion of migration issues between Cuba and the United States. They represent a continuation of our nearly 30-year engagement with Cuba on migration matters as neighboring countries, as neighboring states. We do maintain, as you know, diplomatic relations and discussions on safe, orderly, and legal migration. That remains a primary U.S. interest. It's the precise reason why we are having these discussions with the Cubans as well as with other partners in the hemisphere. And based on U.S. interests and our support for family reunification for the Cuban people, we did resume these migration talks between the United States and Cuba. They started this morning. They're occurring over the course of the day today. We have seen, and this I think underscores the imperative of undertaking these talks, we've seen a significant increase in irregular migration on the part of Cuban migrants coming to the United States. That includes both via overland routes and maritime routes. These talks have been long-standing. They've evolved since they were first taken on in 1984. They've since become a biannual occurrence following the signing of an accord in 1994 and 1995. The talks, of course, have been paused in recent years. They had not occurred since 2018, but they had occurred consistently across administrations since 1995. They do provide an opportunity for important discussions on mutual compliance with migration accords and the commitment of the United States and Cuba to safe, legal and orderly migration. And that's the interest of ours, is ensuring safe, legal, orderly migration between Cuba and the United States is consistent with our interest in fostering family reunification and the promotion of greater respect for freedom and human rights in Cuba. Topics for the talks have included well-established mechanisms to address irregular migration and compliance with U.S. immigration law, migration via both land and sea, migration trends, returns and repatriations of citizens, embassy functions, and other related issues. I understand that we'll have a little bit more to offer upon conclusion of the talks today.
Is it safe to say that you would like to see a reduction in the significant increase in irregular migration that you've seen coming from the Cubans? Is that part of what's being discussed?
It is safe to say that we would like to see a process that is safe, orderly, and legal, and not one that is dominated by irregular migrants seeking to make a dangerous either overland journey or maritime journey to the United States.
Right, and then just Solomon Islands.
In terms of the Solomon Islands, the delegation is going to arrive to the Solomon Islands later today, Eastern Time. These are discussions that will take place over the day on April 22nd in the Solomon Islands. This visit, and it's being led by our Assistant Secretary Dan Crittenbrink and the White House's Indo-Pacific Coordinator Kurt Campbell, will follow up on Secretary Blinken's visit to the region earlier this year. It was during that visit where he announced plans to reopen an embassy in the Solomon Islands. And this visit is about demonstrating how partnership with the United States can deliver prosperity, peace, security, and highlighting the strength and strengthening bonds between America and the Solomon Islands. To your question, you didn't raise this explicitly, but it will be on the agenda. We are closely following the status of the security agreement between the Solomon Islands and the People's Republic of China. The signing of the agreement does not change our concerns and that of our regional partners and allies, and it does not change our commitment to a strong relationship with the region and to strengthening our ties with Solomon Islands and its Pacific Island neighbors. The Solomon Islands response to Secretary Blinken's announcement earlier this year of our plans to reopen an embassy on Honiara, it was overwhelmingly positive. And we have engaged and will continue to engage with senior officials in the Solomon Islands government as we work towards formally establishing that embassy. We've had a series of very positive, forward-looking interactions, and the delegation will discuss common interests and activities that, again, will be predicated on partnership and that will benefit both the American people and the people of the Solomon Islands. Christine.